Okay, welcome back to my next installment on the Lightroom Editing Series. This one is going to be about my workflow and the steps that I take to actually begin the process of editing. So what I want to do here is first let you know what version I'm on. I am on Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic CC. This is version 7.3.1. and it's using Camera Raw 10.3. Now, Lightroom, of course, is set up in various modules. It's designed as not only an editing tool, but also a cataloging tool. It's what's called a Digital Asset Management Program, or DAM. And what we're going to be spending our time is up here at the top of the screen is the library module, and that's where we're going to spend our time today. So what I want to do first is I've actually taken my CF card out of my 7D Mark II. I've loaded it into the card reader and it's ready to go, and Lightroom will automatically recognize your card reader. So when I click import, the import dialog will come up, and in here it will have all my photos that are on that, in this case, it's EOS Digital. That's my CF card up here. You can see that in the upper left corner. The check mark is checked for all photos, but I've already imported this in the past, but for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to click on this text checkbox over here called Don't Import Suspected Duplicates. I'm going to uncheck that because I want to actually show you how this is done. So, as you can see, I have a list of images here from a photo shoot that I did a couple days ago in the backyard, and you probably can already tell that there's images I'm not going to use, but this is what it looks like. This is the import dialog as you see it when you first open. What I want to focus your attention on now is on the right side of the screen. You're going to see several palettes, if you will, to the right. One is called File Handling, one is called File Renaming, and one is called Apply During Import and Destination, and so on and so forth. So if we start at the top up here, what I typically will do in the File Handling is sometimes, but not always, you'll see this first option. It's called Build Smart Previews. If you check that box, what that will do is it will actually create a preview image so that when you're going through them during the culling process, it will load much faster. Honestly, in practicality, it doesn't seem to help me that much. Maybe it's my computer not being fast enough. I don't know. I typically will not check the Build Smart Previews dialog. So I leave that unchecked, but feel free to use that, and perhaps if you had 3,000 or 4,000 images, that might be a good solution. I don't know. But feel free to try that for yourself and see if you like it. We just talked about the second option, which is Don't Import Suspected Duplicates. That's nice if maybe you left a couple images off your card and you're like, well, I want to import those now. So that will keep you from importing those again. You can actually make a second copy here to a different location. For example, you could back those images up. I typically do not use that because my card is my backup anyway at this point, so I typically won't do that, but you could at that time back up to a hard drive, and that will back up all your RAW or JPEG files. You can also choose to add the images to a collection. That doesn't seem practical to me because collections typically to me are unfinished, or are finished images rather, that you have specially grouped for showing to others and so on and so forth. So I don't check that box either. Now in file renaming, some people actually rename their files here. I typically do not do that. I typically will just take the file format that the camera uses. In this case, you probably can't see it, but it's like it's a numeric. Here, let me hover over it for a second here. It's basically a numeric, alphanumeric identifier .cr2, which is your raw file. And so I just leave that in there because I'm only going to select a few out of here later on, and that's the ones I'll actually name a certain way. So I don't typically do anything with that palette, if you will. Now, the apply during import. Now, this one's kind of important. That's the next palette down. You can see it kind of over here to the right side of the screen. Typically, I will select my copyright metadata here. Alternatively, you can select, I was just doing a second ago there, you can select, do you want all your images to be, for instance, have a red filter or have some kind of effect done on them. And that doesn't seem very practical to me, but I do have this copyright metadata preset that I use, and that gets applied to all my images. Now, the next thing is very important, which is the keyword text box. And this is where I will put things in that are general keywords. So, for instance, I know that these images were taken in Forsyth County. So I might start out with USA, and the next keyword, Forsyth County. I know that they're all birds, so I'm going to put bird, birds, birding, bird watching, so on and so forth. I mean, you get the idea. You're putting general keywords in here. You're not putting very specific. I wouldn't want to put, like, for example, cardinal, because they're not all cardinals. So and generally speaking, the way that people recommend you keyword is general to specific. So it's USA, Forsyth County, bird, birds, birding, bird watching, feathers, whatever. You get the picture. Put what you want in there. The next palette, if you will, or it's really more like an accordion view over here is what it is. And this is where you would select a subfolder to put them into. Now, this is kind of important. What I will typically do is I will put them into a subfolder. And I'll put them into temp, for example. Sometimes I do by date. You can see here that I've got by date sometimes. It depends on the mood I'm in, I guess. The important thing that I do, though, is I create a temp folder. And the reason I think that's important is because a temp folder, I know instantly when I look at that folder that this is just temporary. This is not something that I'm going to store images in for years, right? And periodically I will go in here and I will just purge these temp folders. It's a temporary holding area where I can work on them, I can call them, and eventually be done with it. So I'm going to pick temp. I'm going to, let's look here. I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it, rock setup photography. Rock setup. Let's just call it rock setup. And it's going to go right here in my temp folder, which is located on my external hard drive. All my images go to an external hard drive initially. They do not go on my actual laptop. That is first and foremost to save room on my actual computer. And also, when they go on that hard drive, they are immediately backed up via Carbonite online cloud-based backup service. So that's another reason I do that. I'm going to leave them all checked. As you can see, you can uncheck the ones you don't want. Well, let's just uncheck a few of these here. And you kind of get the idea. They go gray on you there. And then all I have to do is hit the import button. And they begin the import process. Now, the import process can take a while. I find it takes too long personally. And so that's something that you're going to have to deal with. It's just part of Lightroom, if you will. It just takes a long time, and you just have to wait. I will say one word of caution here. If you're doing a smart preview, it can take even longer for the files to import. And that's why I was saying before that you may not want to do that. But that's what I do as far as the import process. All right, now as these are importing, believe it or not, I can actually start going through them. I don't recommend that you do a lot of heavy editing at this point. I don't recommend that you delete anything. By the way, when I do this, I don't delete anything. Deleting takes time. If I were to go in here, and you can see number 1 here, if I were to delete that image, that's taking processing time, right? Not only that, but every time you delete one of these, it's got to re-index everything. And so for that reason, I don't do that while I'm importing. There's no reason to do that. I used to when I first started, but I realized that's not important. Okay. Now, at this point, we're in the library module, of course. Up here, they're importing. They are imported by number, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. You can see it's loaded quite a few here. Also, if you look down here at the bottom right, you'll see this little slider called thumbnails. You can adjust the size of your thumbnails there, and you can see them kind of move in and out as I adjust. Whatever you're comfortable doing. If you want a larger thumbnail like this, you can do that. If you want a little bit smaller, which is what I like to see, you can do that. So that's a nice feature. Okay, so as I start going through here, I'm looking for several things. I'm looking for exposure. Is the exposure done properly? Is the subject matter interesting? Does it have proper focus? Lots and lots of just basic stuff. I'm doing a technical pass at this point. If I do happen to see one that looks really, really, really good, you may see me go ahead and star it, or you may see me put 2 stars or 3 stars, and I'll go through the starring here as I go. Okay, so obviously here, these images here at the top, I was checking exposure, doing some previewing. You'll see that I've actually overexposed this a little bit, and that's on purpose. That's called exposing to the right. And as long as you know that if I look at my histogram, you see over here on the right side of the screen is my histogram. Notice how it hasn't gone all the way through to the right. That tells me that I still have information there, and I can bring that back. So that's why you'll see me do these exposure tests before I even start shooting. That's kind of just an aside for you. So as I go down through here, I'm looking through. I'm like, okay, this guy over here, that's not going to work. Let me crank these up a little bit so it's easier to see on your screen. Here's a blue jay. He's looking away from the camera. That's not going to work. This guy's flying away. Too low a shutter speed. That's not going to work. Like, okay, well, here's one of a blue jay. It's not a perfect shot, but let's go ahead and I'll show you what I do here. So I'm going to double click that image. That's going to take me into the larger view. Now, a lot of people might stop here. I do not stop here, okay? I will immediately at this point zoom into the eye, and I will look, and it's going to load up here. Let's see what it looks like. I can't remember if this is a good one. Okay, this is a sharp image. So at 100%, I can see that this guy's eye is sharp. I can look around, come down. I can check the, how blown out is this rock? It's still recoverable. The highlights are recoverable. That looks good. I can zoom in here to the background. I can look at the noise. A pretty heavy noise here, not because I use the high ISO, but because shadow increases noise dramatically. So I'll have to do some noise reduction on this later. But all these things are going through my head within 1 to 2 seconds as I look at this. And so I'm going to say, you know what, I like this one. I'm going to come down here to the set rating, and I'm going to give that a 1 star. Now, why do I give it a 1 star? That simply means that the image was in focus, and it's an image that I could potentially use. It doesn't mean that in the end I'm going to pick this one. It just means that it was good enough for the first pass. Remember, this first pass, I'm just trying to get a feel for how things work with this shoot. I'm just trying to get a sense of, is this image good enough? Is it technically good? Is the exposure right? Does it need to be cropped? All that stuff, that's just stuff that you immediately think about when you go through. Okay, the next image, it's basically the exact same image, but you'll notice one minor difference here is that his beak is slightly less open. That may be desirable, it may not be. So this is all things that I'm thinking about as I'm going through. Sharpness is the same, looks good, give it a 1 star. We'll check it out later. Move on. Okay, just rocks, checking exposure. Over here, it got a grackle looking the wrong way. It's not even in a good spot. Again, checking some exposure here. Okay, we got the next one. We got his mouth wide open on this one. Well, is that going to be a good shot? I don't know. Let's go in and look at it. So I'm going to immediately go into 100%. And the way you do the way you go into 100% is you just click it again. So I also wanted to draw your attention in the upper left corner over here. See this little box? I can actually drag that around, right? And it shows you exactly where you're looking at. Or I can hold in my left mouse button and drag the actual bird around like this on the main screen. I can click it again and it'll zoom out. Click it again, it'll zoom in. This image is a little more desirable just because his mouth's open. If you look, it's not quite as sharp though. It's acceptably sharp. I could sharpen that a little bit and it would look fine, but not quite as sharp as the last one. But I think it's salvageable. I'm going to give it a 1 star. Okay, the next one, same thing. I'm going to immediately zoom in. Now, at this point, you can take a little bit of a shortcut, which is what I like to do. If I get a sequence of images, I'll take a shortcut. So I'm going to let that load. And then that looks good. I'm going to give it a star. Then I'm going to hit my right mouse, my right arrow key. And that's going to take me to the next one. And look, it's already zoomed in where I want it to be, and it's loading. And once it loads up, is it good? Yep, meets technical qualifications. Move on to the next one. Okay, this one I've got the nictating membrane of the bird covering part of his eye. That's not going to be good. Move on to the next one. This one, it's loading up. Tack sharp. Looks good. Next one. Loading up. Tack sharp, looks good. So you get the idea as I'm going through here. Here's, butt shots are a bad idea with birds. Don't do that. That's nasty. Looks stupid. It's not nasty, it just looks stupid. So now I've got a cardinal down here. Let's look at that sequence. This guy or this girl here looks like she might be interesting. I'm gonna let that zoom in and render. And it's sharp. Looks like she's eating a seed there, if you don't mind that. You can take that or leave it. It's sharp though. It's a very sharp image actually. I'll give it a 1 star. Let's go with that. Okay, and there's a bunch more here. Let me just go in and give this a 1 star. Alternatively, by the way, you can 1 star out here on the actual the grid view out here in the library. You can star them there as well. Also draw your attention to let me crank this up a little bit. let me draw your attention to this little tag down here in the bottom. That means the photo's already been keyworded. Just a little trivia there. Okay, I'm still looking through. I'm looking for head turn. Is the head turn toward me? I'm looking for the crest. The crest is flat here. I don't like that. So I'm just going to keep on going. Great pictures of a rock. Okay, and this, she's got her crest mostly fallen here. She's turned away slightly. Not a good image here. You've got a cut off late shot that didn't work out. So now we're down into a new sequence with these house finches. The rock's pretty big for a house finch, but we could crop that and do something with it if we wanted to. I like the head turn here, so I'm going to zoom in on that real quick. Again, I'm just clicking once to zoom in, click again to zoom out. Alternatively, you can click over here and zoom in, zoom out. You double click over here though. Double click to zoom out. Zoom in, one click, double click to zoom out. So, is that sharp? Might be able to be corrected. Honestly, the shot's not that inspiring anyway, so probably would just leave that out for the purposes of this demo. Okay, now we're down to the next sequence. We got some pretty mourning doves here. Let's go ahead and check one. Zooming all the way in, looking at 100% view, making sure that it is sharp. Now make sure it loads. See, this is not sharp. Here's an example of an image at 100% and it's not sharp, and I'll bounce right out of that one. Go on to the next one. It's loading. It's painfully slow to load these images. There's no excuse for that, really, honestly. So this whole sequence looks slightly out of focus. So I'm going to come up, let's skip down to the bottom. I know there's some unfocused down here. Let's see here. Sorry guys, this is all real time. I mean, what you're seeing here is exactly what I go through. Okay, let's zoom in on this guy or gal. Check and focus on the eye. Always check and focus on the eye. That looks fairly sharp. I could go with this one. We'll give it a star. Okay, so now let's just say I'm done. I'm all the way to the bottom and I'm done, right? The next step is, remember that we marked each one of those with one star that we liked. So let's go in here to the filter. Up here in the right side of your screen, there's this filter drop down list. You want to select rated. Now it's going to give me all rated, right? And now we take a second look at the images, all right? Now which one of these do I like better, 1 or 2? They're roughly the same. I like 2, so I'm going to give that 2 stars. All right, which one of these do I like better, 3 or 4? That's a good question. I mean, this one's showing a little more rock over here to the right. I'm looking at these type of things. I'm looking at the background. I can see some modeled stuff here in the background I'm not really happy with. You could maybe change that in post a little bit. Still pretty contrasty at this point, I think. Let's just take this guy over here. We'll give him 2 stars. By the way, when I don't know if I explained that or not, but when I'm going from this screen, say I zoom in like this, when I want to get back out to the other screen, I click on this little grid view down here to the left. Okay, this little grid view. See how I'm doing that? Double click on the image to get me in there. Click on the grid view down here to get me back. Okay. So let's just go down through here. I'll just randomly star some of these, 2, 3 stars, whatever. Just randomly select some of these just for demonstration purposes. Now I'm going to say, okay, fine. Out of all these rated, now I want to see this little rating, these stars right here. I'm going to say, now show me only 2 stars or greater. And then it's showing me 2 stars or higher. So I'm constantly, what's happening here is this is part of what's called culling. I'm constantly bringing these images down. Now you might start with 1,000 images, 2,000 images, but you're slowly getting them down to where you're only looking at a few. So now I'm looking at these and I'm saying, okay, which ones do I really like? Okay, I don't like number 1. I like number 2. He's still in the running. Let's give him a 3 star. I like this guy with the funny head turn. Leave him at 3 stars. All right, I like this. She's pretty nice. All right, so now up here in the ratings, on the filter ratings, I select 3 stars. So now it's even down even closer. Now of these 2, maybe at this point I like both of these, but just for the sake of argument, of these 2 Blue Jays, which one do I like the best? And I think this guy's a little comedic over here, so I'm going to give him 4 stars. Okay. Now, I don't usually go to 4 stars. I'm just using that as an example. At this point, I would probably finish all of these images. And what I mean by finish is I would actually go to the develop module and actually develop them, check contrast, exposure, set my black and white points. That's in the other video, by the way, the basic editing video. This is basic culling of your images. So that's what I'm left with. I'm left with these 3 images, and that's the ones I'm going to use and post on the internet and so on and so forth. Honestly, I would probably not select either one of these on the top. I would probably only post, and I actually did, only post this one here of the Mourning Dove. I think it looks the nicest, even though you've got this modeled background back here. Sometimes at this point, I will just dip into the develop module real quick and just make sure that I can deal with the because I'm using the exposing to the right, or ETTR. Some of this stuff is pretty hot. In other words, it's got some bright highlights. So sometimes I'll just go over here to the highlights slider and just rip those down and just make sure that I can pull those highlights back. And as I knew, I could. Now, if the photo was this overexposed, you probably wouldn't be able to pull them back. But, I knew going in that it was like this, I could pull those back. So that's another quick check sometimes I'll do at this point. But that's pretty much it on importing and culling your images. It's just a matter of taking that and expounding on it. Okay, we're not expounding, but extrapolating it to another level. I've got 3,000 images from my trip to Florida. Okay, I've got to go through those all, and I've got to go through each one and say, is it sharp? Is it exposed properly? Give it a star. Is it sharp? Is it exposed? On and on and on. And that's what it's all about. Now, as a final step, what I will do, let's just pretend that this is all done and over. Come up here to your custom filters. Now, remember I told you that I never delete anything initially, right? The whole point of using the star system is it allows me to come up here to the custom filter, select unrated. Okay? This gives me every image that was unrated. In other words, I didn't like it good enough to even give it a rating. Now watch this. Control A to select all. Hit the delete key. Are you sure you want to delete these? Yep, delete them from the disk. And it's going to go through and delete every single one of those images. Some people aren't comfortable doing that. I've been doing it long enough that I just know that's what I want to do. I only want the best images left. I don't want my drive getting cluttered with junk images. And so that's what I do. Beyond that, like I said, beyond this is pretty much the end. It goes into my next video, which is the basic wildlife editing video, and you can watch that for more information. Thank you.